Hi, I'm here today at DSEI with Dave Wajsgras, CEO of Intelsat. Hi, Dave. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Alex, it's great to be here with you and at one of the premier defense and security shows in the entire world.
Yes, yeah, no, it's very, very nice to be in this buzzing environment, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So, Dave, before we start digging into what Intelsat does, could you give us a bit of background about you? You know, where you come from
Sure.
and how did you get here?
I won't go all the way back because it would take a couple hours.
True.
But the very short version is before joining Intelsat, I spent about 15 years in the defense and security industry. A company called Raytheon, which I'm sure is represented here somewhere.
Yes.
I left there a couple of years ago and have since joined Intelsat as the CEO. Intelsat is a satellite communications company, and we have a very large business in the defense and security area where we serve governments, militaries, intelligence communities around the world.
Okay, so before digging again into what Intelsat does more specifically, can you give us a bit of a background in terms of the market that you're in, the satellite market? What are the main challenges, the main trends, and maybe also the main opportunities?
Sure. So satellite communications, the industry is a very global industry, companies all over the world. What we do at Intelsat, we're what's termed a satellite operator. So we will design satellites and have one of the manufacturing companies, think Alice, Airbus, Maxar, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, build those satellites for us. We take them back. We launch them. You can think of Ariane Space or SpaceX, and then we operate those satellites around the world for global connectivity. Now, what Intelsat does specifically, without getting overly technical, is we operate what's called the GEO arc.
Okay.
So we have satellites that are pretty far out there, and they are essentially stationary. They're on an orbit with the Earth's rotation, and we have the largest fleet of GEO satellites in the world with 58 satellites on orbit. And in fact, we have the largest terrestrial network as well in the satellite industry with over 100,000 miles covered, on the ground. So between those two, we believe we're the largest satellite operator, again, in the world. There's other orbits. There's the GEO orbit, MEO orbit, and LEO.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are now quite interested in what's going on in the LEO orbit. I'm sure we can talk about that in a few minutes.
Okay, I'm sure we will. So with all of this experience and all of this presence, what are the main trends in this market that you've noticed in the last few years?
That's a great lead-in question. Okay, so the trend I just alluded to, LEO.
Yeah.
So traditionally, when Intelsat was founded back in 1964 by President Kennedy, it was basically a government-owned business. By the time the company went private in 2001, there were 180 countries that had an ownership stake in Intelsat. Since then, we've gone private, we've gone public, we're private again. There's no government ownership of Intelsat. The reason I'm saying that is because when the industry was first launched, no pun intended, the only satellites that were operable from a communication standpoint were GEO satellites, geostationary satellites. Today, and what's happened in the past few years, there's a large entrance of LEO operators, low Earth orbit satellites, closer to the Earth. There's some benefits to LEO connectivity, and there's some disadvantages, just like there is, with any product or solution offering. Benefits to GEO, and there's some latency challenges, and there's benefits to LEO, but there's other challenges in LEO. So what's happening is there's a lot of focus on how do you marry those two solution sets together to provide ubiquitous connectivity around the world to all the users. And that's commercial users. Think of land mobility, think maritime, think commercial aviation. We're the largest provider to the commercial aviation industry of the world of Wi-Fi.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever heard of the company called GoGo. GoGo Wi-Fi, very large. We bought them a couple of years ago. They're now called Intelsat Commercial Aviation. And of course, we have a very large presence and market share in the defense and security market.
Okay, so when you say you need to make them work together, you know, the LEO and the GEO, what does this mean in terms of the fact that there are LEOs? Does that interfere? What are the main issues there?
No, there's there's basically, think of it as a clearinghouse. There's a, if you think of, I don't want to, again, I'm trying to stay away from too much of the science and the physics, but there's a process, a global process in place to appropriately share bandwidth between the satellites that are in the different orbits. Again, the driver here at the end of the day is ubiquitous, continuous, high quality communications for whatever consumer, whatever customer that we're serving. When you think of your cell phone, a lot of the time your cell phone is not just communicating terrestrially on the ground. When you pick up the phone and you're calling somebody that's, you know, that's out of, you know, the physical geography, it's going through satellite communications, so from the cell tower up to what we call exoatmospheric, into a satellite, coming back down to another cell tower, coming to the cell phone. So it's one big system.
Right.
That Intelsat is very well positioned, and which is appropriate for this, for the group that's here today in this building. We are very well positioned to be a solutions provider, an integrator of communication systems. A lot of companies talk about it. We've actually been doing this for 60 plus years.
Yeah. So actually, as you said to me before, this is a great segue to the next question. We're here at DSEI, so we're talking about military domain. And one of the main themes that's really emerging is integration, multi-domain integration, joint forces and everything. So is this something you're looking into? Is this also what you were talking about, making sure that everyone plays well together?
Absolutely. And different countries and different regions will have different terminology for multi-domain, but it's all about interoperability. It's all about making all these different pieces of equipment just to operate together in a very seamless way, as efficiently as possible and as secure as possible.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of companies that play different roles in that ecosystem. There's very few companies that truly understand how all of this comes together and how you're able to communicate more seamlessly anywhere on the globe. And in some areas, we have obviously conflicts going on. I mean, what's right here on this continent, which the world is talking about, which is a very unfortunate situation, but you need communications on the battlefield. You need communications in very rural areas of the continent of Africa. You need communications in London and New York City. Yeah. So there's all sorts of different basically demands on the communication system. And again, I know I'm repeating myself, but it's worth it. There's not a lot of companies that are in this industry or even the defense and security industry that have the experience and expertise that Intelsat does to bring all of this together.
Okay, well, given this expertise, as you say, what kind of solutions do you provide? What answers do you provide to these challenges?
So, again, we bring that, what I would call intellectual capital and the 60 years of experience. Today, we are moving up the technology chain, the technology roadmap that we're using that we believe is going to be a differentiator for us. We're investing in 5G, and that's not just a, commercial, everybody talks about it. We have significant financial investments that are dedicated significant resources to 5G, to virtualization, to software-defined networks. And what does all of this really mean? What does it? It really means we're taking communications to the next level of efficiency, and think of that as speed and quality and security. One of the things that people are now talking about are optical communications, okay? Because it moves at, staying away from the numbers, at a much higher rate of speed with a much higher security profile than anything in RF, okay, which is the more traditional way that everybody communicates around the world. That is a technology that will be fielded, and we are believe will be out in front of this over the next few years. I would say this becomes operable and usable in the next 3 or 4 years from now. Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of exciting developments.
Oh, there really is.
I know we said we weren't good to go too much into the technical details, but I am curious. So 5G, we all know what it is. Software-defined radios in the military domain, we more or less all know what it is. How do you virtualize communications satellites?
So virtualization, there's a lot of buzzwords in every industry. So all virtualization is making something from a software perspective look and act like a piece of hardware. That's the way to think about it. So if you think of a software-defined modem, you're not going to see a physical piece of equipment. It'll be a card that has software that sits inside of a broader piece of equipment.
Okay.
So when modems, when the internet started years ago, everybody had the big physical modem. So when you think of moving to virtualization, you're thinking of not looking at that physical appliance anymore.
Okay.
It's all embedded in the software.
Okay, I get it. So is there anything in particular in terms of what you're doing now, the roadmap that you've just elaborated, that you're very excited about?
Well, for us, and I talked about it a couple of moments ago, about the interoperability of multi-orbit capabilities. For us, it fills in gaps around the world. When I say gaps, it's not necessarily full communications gaps. It's really signal clarity, signal strength, whereby if think of a plane flying a long distance, okay? Just met somebody from Australia.
Yes.
So think of going from here or the United States to Australia. It's a long flight.
Yeah.
To have coverage all the way through is extremely difficult for a lot of different reasons. Putting in a multi-orbit strategy will fill in those communications gaps so somebody can be on the phone for 22 hours if they like.
Who would like that?
Yeah, not me, but some people would.
And not as their neighbor on a plane.
No, I get on these planes, I fall asleep. But some people actually sit on the phone for 22 hours. Okay, and that's the consumer we're trying to serve. I'm kidding.
So, you've been very patient with me and answering all my questions. So before I let you go back to business for today, the last question I had was, you've talked about your roadmap. In terms of the market, in terms of what we're seeing, what can we expect in the next few years?
So I think in the defense and security market, for all of us, broadly speaking, that are part of that industry, there's a tremendous pull up for demand of what we provide.
Yeah.
This connectivity is real. It's growing. The demand for more data quicker, and being able to communicate anywhere on the globe is what's driving our industry. And I think that's going to continue for the foreseeable future. Look, I'm not the first one to say this. The world is truly a dangerous place in some regions.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
And there are bad actors all over the world. Mostly not, but all over the world. We need to make sure that our industry supports our countries and people that are allied with our countries in a way that keeps us ahead of not only the competition, but ahead of the curve with respect to, let's call it, these bad actors. And I think the communications industry in general, the satellite communications industry more specifically, is going to lead the way.
Yes, absolutely. Communications is key, as they say today. Who has the information has the advantage. So you're enabling that.
That's a much more succinct way to say what I was just trying to say.
Well, that proves that you said it really well. That way I understood it. So, again, thank you very much, David. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. And I hope you have a great show.
We will. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.